During this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, in America and many other countries, we've been sheltered in place and not able to gather as churches, as congregations, physically together. I believe this has created some profound loss for the church. I also believe that there are gains that we can see in this that we ought to reflect upon in our prayer and discussion. I asked, therefore, a group of pastor friends and a few non-pastor leaders in churches to respond to the question of what has been the greatest loss and what has been, you believe, the greatest gain during these weeks of not meeting together physically as congregations. One said, "The greatest loss I've experienced is the loss of profound and personal pastoral care." He said, at the same time, the great gain has been that we've learned to worship and gather outside and beyond the four walls of our buildings. Another Protestant pastor from a more liturgical church said, the gathering for the Eucharist and the missing of our whole communion together has been a huge loss. At the same time, he said, we've become profoundly aware, perhaps in new ways, that the Spirit of God lives in us and that God is with us and will never abandon us even when we can't be together. Yet another Protestant pastor said the close encounters of meeting people by chance, just for 30 or 45 seconds in the hallway or outside of a service, that start deeper new relationships is a loss. At the same time, he said, deeper conversation seems to be naturally happening by telephone and by media sources like FaceTime and Zoom. Still another said, from a large evangelical church, I miss our singing and our music, and I miss the signs of peace that we pass. And I miss the conversations over a cup of coffee and our social gatherings before, but especially after our worship time. But he said, in reflecting on this positively, I've never had so much time with my wife and children. Interesting, isn't it? Pastoring a large church, how this can just take you away from your family as your priority. He said also that this has required a kind of forced respite, a kind of sabbatical in which he's being forced to pay attention to little things that he normally would not give his attention to the way he has in recent weeks. I want to quote what he says from these words in his text to me in closing. He says, during this season, we've also had as a church a unique opportunity to really consider how to live missionally in whatever context we may find ourselves. We've mobilized, he said, 11 different teams to tackle 11 of our greatest needs that we've identified in our city. It's been remarkable to see the fervor with which our church family has stepped up to love their neighbors and engage in ways that we had not done before the pandemic. I'll suggest some other answers to this question in part 2, but I think these are good reflections for us to consider.